back in the next day or so, and I think he's got his projections and stuff up today. So appreciate that to Sheets, and again, all of our best wishes back to him and his family. All right, we're gonna get going here today and talk a little game by game NBA. We'll be using Saber Sim projections. A little bit later, Goldie will have his projections up, and actually, he might have them up shortly. So it probably will happen while we're recording. But Goldie, again, to remind everybody, has the industry aggregate. We feel good about being the only site in the entire industry that offers the entire industry aggregate, so the most accurate projections in the industry, along with, of course, Sheets' projections and Saber Sims. But with everything said, let's just get right into it. We're going to go game by game here. I'm going to pull it up, and we're going to go from here. So, and we'll talk about some of the things we look for along the way. Also do want to encourage people to check out Goldie's videos. They tend to run a little longer, but they're really, really interesting and very in-depth, really, really like incredible knowledge in MLB. And I think that you guys should do yourself a favor and take a look at that. So let's go game by game here. We're going to start off with New York and Oakland. And as I always do, I either bring up the starting lineups page from MLB, or I like the RG free starting lineups page just because it's got just the lineups and the general weather. Not ideal hitting conditions in New York. You got a little bit of wind blowing in from not much, but a little bit from right center, and at 64 degrees, but not terrible. It's still Yankee Stadium. And right off the bat, I actually think that I'm in Schmidt's on my list because he's this cheap. It's the A's, and we know he can sort of back his way into a decent game. So he's on my list. I'm not maybe as interested as some other people are. The Yankees kind of broke out a little bit yesterday. The stack today is going to be fairly low owned enough for me to definitely take a look back at them again today. We also have, let me just make sure I'm right about this, because we should have Judge back in the lineup, but I don't see him on the list. I thought he was going to be playing today. So let's see who ends up playing for the Yankees. We should have that stuff earlier, well before lock. But either way, it's going to be hard for me to ignore them. I definitely think against Rosinski and probably the worst bullpen in baseball, that they make a lot of sense. I also don't mind getting to some A's. I don't think that you need to stack them because they don't walk a ton. The Yankee bullpen is really good. But I do think that, at these, again, they're still reasonable prices. You've got some speed here with Ruiz. Laureano's questionable, but with him as well, he hasn't run as much this year. Noda, we've seen some of that power early in the season. Langoliers. There's a lot of guys, and Brent Rooker probably being the best option. I do think this is an interesting spot to take, maybe a mini stack. But I do think that the Yankees are going to be the more of the priority for me in this one. And some of that will depend on if they get Judge back in the lineup. It's not just about having one extra good bat in the lineup, or maybe arguably the best fantasy producer, certainly the best fantasy producer last year. But you also get the fact that he takes a lot of pitches, he keeps the lineup moving. Another guy who walks a lot, so makes the whole stack seem a little bit more appealing, even though it does make them more expensive. Boston, Atlanta. Look, it doesn't seem like the right matchup for Pivetta. It's 83 degrees with the winds blowing out 11 miles an hour. Both these pitchers when they're on can get there. I have Morton on my list for sure. I know it's the Red Sox. I know they don't strike out a ton. And you're going to get no ownership on Morton. It's great hitting weather, so I think you could certainly take bats from both sides in this game. I'm a little probably higher on Morton in general, even though I know he hasn't looked quite as good. I still just believe that he's going to round into form. He is getting older, but I do believe that. And Pivetta, a wide range of outcomes pitcher that we've seen the good and the bad from in the past, but I just think this is a really tough matchup for him in Atlanta, and I am going to be high on Atlanta. The issue is, based on the size of the slate, these are fairly chalky numbers, but I still think you're going to have Atlanta as one of your stacks if you're multi-entering. And certainly, obviously Acuna one-offs never a problem. Olsen one-offs never a problem. Mini stack totally fine. But I do like the Braves at first look here, and I have Morton on my list, but I don't know where he's going to make it. We'll revisit the priorities by the end. And we'll talk a little FanDuel when we go live later on at 6 Eastern time. All right, let's talk about the White Sox and the White Sox and the Royals. Giolito, Jordan Lyles. So, okay, starting off, Giolito is a guy I like to play. He's also a guy I like to stack against. I'm not going to stack against him today because there's enough other good stacks. And you have a little bit of weather issues. The wind's blowing in. I do think Giolito is definitely in play here. We've seen the Royals sort of help people out along the way. And just for fun, real quick, let's pull up Giolito's BBP because he's had a decent sample against these guys. And I think BVP, this is the way I like to treat it. Unless the guy's got like 40 plate appearances or like 30, but he's never struck it out and he's, had half of them extra base hit, something outlandish. I don't put as much emphasis in it, but I do put emphasis on it for the pitcher in these situations. And still not a massive sample size. It's mostly Dozier and Perez, and I don't even know if Dozier will be in the lineup tonight. They've hit him pretty decently. The strikeout rate is above average. They've actually hit 10 home runs off of him, which is quite a lot in 96 at-bats. But, you do have the wind blowing in from right center. I think the righties would make more sense just based on that alone. And I think that it's, look, the White Sox are funny because they have really been bad against right-handed pitching, but they've started to round into a little bit more to form. I have the White Sox on my list. I don't know if I really want to play if the winds stay up like that. It is warm, so it should negate some of that. But you have a fairly popular team here against Jordan Lyles, who's really struggled. And I'm always a fan of picking on Jordan Lyles because he walks guys and gives up home runs. Very simple. The problem is he's 6,200, and there is a tiny part of me that wants to actually play Jordan Lyles. Now, we'll probably get better things later on. But it's just worth noting because he's a guy who, at least when he's going, he has a leash. So as a cheap option, he'll be on my early list for now. Probably won't make my lineups, but just wanted to mention him just because I do think that it's maybe not quite as bad of a play as it might look like. The White Sox stack certainly more of a priority, but I don't mind if you go that way as well. You also have the KC side of it where you're not going to have any ownership. And as I just mentioned, with the power upside, especially Salvador Perez, whether you're playing them or not, certainly Perez, Pascantino, Melendez, and Witt are kind of interesting. Again, not loving the fact that you got to hit into the wind. It just lessens the home run chance. But it is 79 degrees, so you do get the hitting benefit upside. And it does the wind, based on where it's coming from right now, if it stays this way, shouldn't affect the righties as much. But I have the White Sox a little bit behind Atlanta and the Yankees at the moment. That may change by later, but that's what I've got for a first look here. Let's talk about the pitching for San Diego and Minnesota. Nothing that we're going to use. Louis Varland is a very, very tough matchup. And Waka is probably not as bad. Waka sort of, I'm going to throw him into that Lyles category of if you need to spend all the way down. I think that's something that you could consider. Another one where you guys sort of crossed winds, but it doesn't look like it's enough to really bother anything. 70 degrees. Obviously a little bit of rain in there, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one later today. But I'm definitely okay with taking the Padres here. I'm just going to put them on again, this is an early list thing. The Padres and Twins are both interesting enough to me where I think we can definitely take at least pieces, if not the whole thing. I'm kind of surprised to see the Padres total as low as it is. I thought this would be like a 5-run plus total, and I do like them. So because of the lowish ownership and partially due to expensive pricing, I think the White Sox are definitely in play. I think the Padres are definitely in play here. And I think that you can make an argument for maybe not a full twin stack, but certainly for some twins. So I have the Minnesota as maybe a mini stack that I can use a little bit of. And mini for White Sox is mostly what I have, and mini for Minnesota is what I've got. Also, San Diego, the bullpen, don't necessarily like to go for the full 5-man on big slates. But I do like the Padres. I do think the Padres are definitely right up there with Atlanta and New York for me. They get to go hit in a much better stadium than they've been hitting in 50-degree weather in San Diego all year. Maybe they start to explode on this little mini road trip here. So they're on my list pretty high up for sure. All right, well, we're looking at a Cubs game. That means we certainly need to look into the weather because it affects, wind affects this stadium more than it does any other stadium. Well, only 5 miles an hour wind, so nothing major there blown in from center, but the 55 degrees is not all that appealing. You also have two decent pitchers, guys who are just capable of certainly getting through a game without giving up a ton. And St. Louis has been a very, very hard team to want to bet on. They've just been so bad. I don't remember ever seeing the Cardinals this bad. They just are one of those teams that you always sort of pencil in for like 85 to 90 plus wins. And they've been really bad. They also knocked us out of Survivor last week, so a little bit hurt on them. I do think Flaherty's in play. I think that he looked a little bit better. The Cubs, while they have been a great offense, there are still strikeouts in that lineup. So I think that you can definitely take some shots on these guys. I'm not really that interested in this game from a hitting perspective, and I think even Flaherty may be a reach, but I think that he has the ability to potentially get through this Cubs lineup, and you might see one of those 5-inning, 8K kind of a games. Maybe gives up a run or two, maybe 6 innings if you get things going your way. But I certainly don't mind it. All right, let's get to my Dodgers in Milwaukee. For me, this is going to be what are we thinking here? Because I actually think that both of these offenses certainly make some sense. You're obviously playing in a good hitter's park. You see the run total projected for 4.9, 4.6. SaberSim has it at 5 and 4.7. I think that this is a mistake on Peralta, so don't worry about that. He pitched yesterday. But against Lauer, lefties like Lauer actually have had, decent results. And I'm actually going to do a quick look at Eric Lauer because he's pitched against the Dodgers probably more a few years back when he was in San Diego. But I want to see his BVP just to see if there's anything to take anything from, whether it be stacked against him or not. 116 is a pretty good number of plate appearances. Not a ton of home runs off of him. Decent walk rate at 10 walks, and he's had a reasonable strikeout rate. But again, a lot of it's mostly heavily focused on Chris Taylor. Take Chris Taylor out, his numbers look a lot better. I think that I'm okay with both of these stacks today, the Dodgers and Milwaukee. I'm higher on the Dodgers than I am Milwaukee, but I certainly don't mind Milwaukee. So they are definitely going to be on there for me, probably more as mini stacks than as full stacks. I don't think Lauer is quite as bad as people think, but I do think the Dodgers, just against even an average pitcher, have the ability to explode, and especially, again, bump up in a better hitter's park than they are at Dodger Stadium, at least early in the year. And Syndergaard is just not – Syndergaard is, we want to look for stolen bases off of him. He's one of the worst guys in history of baseball at holding runners on, and it's gotten only worse this year. So Yelich, even like Bryce Turang down at the bottom, Jesse Winker, all of these guys could steal bases, and there's some power upside, especially with those guys as well. And I think that they're going to be very low owned. Whereas I think you're going to have the Dodgers with quite a bit of chalk, especially Mookie and Will Smith. I like the Dodgers fine, but I sort of feel like both these teams are probably going to make it more as mini stacks for me. I might consider a full stack if they move Trace up in the lineup and maybe you can get it more affordably. But I like when they play the lefty. I like playing the lefties against lefties, especially Muncy, because his power numbers don't change, career-wise all that much. And who knows how long, if things are going right with your stack, they're going to get Lauer out. So Dodgers, Milwaukee, mostly going to be a mini stack for me on both sides, but I certainly don't mind if you want a full stack either team. A lot of options today as far as stacks go, without any one that I feel like, oh, that's the one I have to play, at least not one we visited yet. Pitching for Atlanta and Houston. Okay, so we've got Ohtani at crazy high ownership against Houston. Okay, I am on board as Ohtani is awesome. He'll make some of my lineups today. Do I really want to play him at 50% ownership against what is still I know they haven't been good, but it's not like this is a bad offense. You still have a 3.5 run total. There's actually very little run difference. And would it be that shocking if Framber Valdez put up a better game against the Angels than Ohtani against Houston? Absolutely not. So I actually think you could consider Valdez as well as a potential spend up. It's a little too much for Valdez, and Ohtani has the higher ceiling. So just kind of funny seeing one guy, 45% owned, the other guy 3% owned, or Goldie's got him at 35 and 3. I just don't think that it happens often enough to where you want to play Ohtani at, if it ends up at 40 plus ownership. I think you want to, limit that to smaller field tournaments, things like that. Because I don't think that there's enough. He has to put up 30 something for you to even be great. And even if he's really good, he doesn't even need to put up 30 in this matchup. He also is not necessarily playing for the win because you got two really good pitchers on the mound. So I do like Ohtani, but I don't know. I'm probably going to be in under that, 35% ownership or whatever it ends up at. even though it's always he does have a monster ceiling, so it's kind of a scary fade. But I just feel like there's other ways I can go and get a little bit lower ownership. I like both pitchers in this game for upside. I always get nervous a little bit with Heaney for good reason. If you wanted, this may not be the right stack to go right day to go ahead and take the other side, but we've seen him just get so lit up at times. I think that there's a reasonable case for maybe taking some Seattle pieces. Suarez would probably be my favorite. But you've got some other guys too. I mean, Suarez depends on where. If AJ Pollock was up in the lineup, which sometimes they do, I don't know if he will be today. That might be something. Ty France hit a home run last night. Nice to see. He's reasonably priced. Suarez, France, Rodriguez. I just want him to start hitting again. He's been pretty bad this year. And yeah, I have both pitchers as totally playable. I would like Heaney a lot better if he was like sub 10% owned here. I actually wish he was like 10K and like 1% owned, because his rate, he's another guy who can put up 30 plus, and he also could put up like -15. Like, he just is a really, really high range of outcome pitchers. I like the matchup for Kirby. I'm a big Kirby guy. I like the Seattle's young pitchers in general. I'm always going to be a little bit overweight on them. So I definitely have Kirby a little bit ahead of Heaney right now, but I am going to make sure to get some Heaney exposure. It just depends on where his ownership falls by the end of the day. Doesn't feel great about playing him as fairly chalky when he has such a wide range of outcomes, but he's such a good strikeout pitcher. Even when he gets hit, sometimes he still gets there. Arizona and Miami, sort of a bullpen-y game. Oh, no. It's fat. So this is I've got to do a little more digging, and I'm pretty sure this is the guy who, we just saw the other day, and he didn't. No, I got to double check Arizona starting pitching, because they have the one kid who's the prospect, and for some reason the name is escaping me right now. I can't remember if this was him, if this is him. So I have to revisit this one later today for the Arizona pitching side. The roof is going to be open in Arizona. Always more fun to play when the roof's open. Luzardo, I actually have a little bit of respect for as a pitcher, but we might be considering the Arizona pitcher. I just need to do a little more digging and make sure that I've got my numbers right. Usually pretty good with this stuff, but when I'm hosting solo, can't really bounce between screens as often because I don't want to leave dead air out there. Anyway, yeah, this is basically at the moment going to be a pitcher's like a no play game for me. But look, it's Arizona. It's going to be hot, and I'm okay with some of the bats. And let me look into the Arizona pitcher, and I'll talk more about Miami on the 6 Eastern show, because I need to just do a little more digging, because I thought that was the guy who was the top prospect, but some names kind of jumble this early in the morning. All right, San Francisco and Washington. Logan Webb is, I think, a very, very good option tonight. Just a really good real-life pitcher. How many times for some of these bad teams, it feels like they kill our chalk pitchers quite a bit, or at least semi-chalk pitchers. They got to Descafani last night pretty early. And look, this is let's see the temperature in it. It's 57. I always like to say San Francisco, I like to wait till it's 60 degrees. That's close to 60 degrees. It's going to be hard to argue against a San Francisco stack because it's Patrick Corbin. The problem is they're going to be popular. The problem is the guys like Austin Slater, Wilmer Flores, they may not, David VR, these guys are likely going to be pinch hit for at some point during the game. And you're only getting 2 or 3 at-bats from a lot of fairly chalky plays. So I like San Francisco, but I think that it's a pieces situation. It feels very strange on a 10-gamer to have them as the highest owned team. I'll look at Goldie's ownership. Look like he's getting that fine-tuned. He's got him a little lower, seemingly a little bit more playable. For what it's worth, I do still think a mini stack, even if you don't stack the game, is very viable. I think Joey Bart will play JD Davis has been playing against righties as well. He's been hitting the ball well. I love Mitch Haniger. I don't care if he's had some early season struggles. I'm still a big on him. Even though Slater and Flores are 2 guys I love to play against lefties, the problem is just how many at-bats are they going to get? So it's a little tricky. Conforto usually plays lefty-lefty. We probably won't get this lineup out till later, so I'm going to guess the ownership may end up a little lower if it's another one of those where they release it at like 7:30 Eastern like they did last night. But I still think you're going to see pretty high ownership on these guys tonight. So just a matter of how much of that you want to play. Even if you're not playing a stack, I do think getting some pieces against Patrick Corbin, who basically always is giving up some home runs and plenty of runs, I think that's totally reasonable. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I do like Logan Webb. I don't know why Saberson has such a high total for Washington. And I think the 3.2 number seems a lot more likely to me. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. So that's sort of a quick rundown of what I'm doing on this slate. What I'm thinking about the slate. But so the stacks I'm heaviest considering right now are the Yankees, Braves, Padres, both sides of the Dodgers, Milwaukee, more as a mini stack. San Francisco more for pieces because I just think the ownership is a little bit too high. And then we get into the Minnesota, Chicago White Sox, and maybe pieces of Oakland. So that's sort of the order I have them right now. Then the pitchers I'm deciding between are going to be Schmidt, Morton, Giolito, Flaherty, Ohtani, Kirby, Heaney, and Webb. I'm probably going to have some Ohtani lineups, but I'm probably going to end up in the 25% range on him. And I think I'm going to probably be overweight most of the other guys. Probably be a little underweight on Schmidt, maybe a little underweight on Heaney, depending on where that ownership we feel like it lands. So I will be live at 6 Eastern time. I really do appreciate all you guys tuning in. Hope you guys will give us the thumbs up, the like. We appreciate all of you. And hopefully we can get someone to take something down tonight. It was not a beautiful night last night. We'll cover NBA, by the way, at 6 Eastern also. But yeah, please like and subscribe. And thank you guys all for being part of True DFS. Good luck, everybody.